Everyone, and welcome to our webinar. I have trust issues with my data. How can I improve my data quality? I'm sure you're excited to learn from our experts about how you can improve the quality of your data so you can trust it for all your decisions. Before we get started, I want to let you know that this session is being recorded and everyone who registered will receive a link to the recording. If you have questions during the session, please enter them in the Q&A box. With that, I would like to introduce our speakers. Sharing their expertise with us today, we have Scott Arnett, Senior Director of Product Management at Precisely. For 25 years, Scott has worked in a variety of roles to help customers solve complex data issues. Scott currently focuses on bringing data quality capabilities to the cloud within Precisely's Data Integrity Suite. Our other expert speaker today is Paul Rasmussen, Principal Product Manager at Precisely. Paul has extensive experience in engineering, consulting, and product management, and is passionate about helping companies tackle their data challenges by focusing on data integrity, analytics, data governance, and data ops. I'd like to now turn it over to Scott Arnett to get us started. Scott?
Thanks, Julie. Before we get started here, I'd like to take a moment just to introduce Precisely for those of you who may or may not be familiar with us. We are a company that has been in the data quality business and a leader in the data quality business for many decades now, over 12,000 customers in 100 different countries worldwide, serving some of the largest Fortune 100 companies, or almost 99 of the 100 largest Fortune 100 companies in the world. And we work in a variety of different verticals, from financial services to telecommunications, to retailers, and we partner with some of the leading technology firms in their fields to bring solutions to our customers. They include partnerships with the likes of Databricks and Snowflake, platform providers like AWS and Microsoft, large companies like IBM, SAP, as well as some of the up-and-coming niche companies around Neo4j and others. So today, we're going to talk about trust issues. And I'd like to start with kind of a basic level setting here. So organizations like yours are implementing various initiatives to meet today's overwhelming business challenges, competing with the uncertain economy or complying with complex regulations, whether it be trying to implement solutions around risk management, around artificial intelligence, around understanding your customer better. There are a number of different ways in which you're looking to leverage the data within your organization in order to help drive processes to make your company more competitive and to be more aware of your market and the state of your organization. And in a recent IDC survey, it probably would be a shock to absolutely nobody that about 83% of CEOs want their organizations to be more data-driven. They want them to leverage data in ways that allow them to make better decisions and in order to drive better processes throughout the organization in order to comply with all the different competitive pressures and regulatory pressures that face modern-day organizations. However, there's always a catch to this. When we survey data practitioners within the organization, you find a slightly different view of the data. 30% of data practitioners, or less than a third, believe they are leveraging data to drive their business. An obvious gap with the desire of CEOs to use that data in order to drive decision making. Further, only 27% of data practitioners believe they can completely trust their data, meaning they feel like there's a lack of ability for them to leverage that data in order to provide the services and decision-making processes that CEOs are looking for. And within the survey, they outline a number of common reasons for that lack of trust. At the top of it is, well, I can't get the data fast enough. The data is trapped in complex legacy systems, not available when and where it is needed, and not as fresh as the business demands for the kind of processes that they want to run. Another common one is, I don't understand the data. Don't understand the lineage of the data, don't know how it's being used in the business, and don't have accountability for changes to the data.
And what's interesting about this, Scott, that I don't understand the data, we're hearing that a lot more in our customers, and the customer inquiries and the customers we talk to, where they're starting the conversation with, I just don't understand all this data I moved into the cloud or into my warehouse. I had a customer that had a project the other day that, they were starting it off and they said, we don't even know where to start for our currency codes. We've got currency codes all over the organization. Where do we even begin with those? Which one is our master reference data? So that's one that we're starting to see a lot more in the market.
Yeah, and I agree. We do see quite a bit of data that's almost being brought out of context and into solutions where it may not necessarily be the right strategic fit for that particular solution. And that certainly lends to a lack of understanding around it. There's also just a general level of trust, right? Common errors within the data, non-standardized inputs, things where maybe checking on the source of the data or taking action to kind of parse out data, kind of your standard data quality type problems that people run into. And context. I don't really understand the context of how this is being used. There's in some cases there's a need for me to take that data and relate it to other information potentially provided by third parties to help give context to things like location for decision making in a marketing situation. It's also, as I said, we talked about a little bit before, bringing data out of its native home and starting to use it for other applications can also create some contextual issues about whether or not this data is appropriate for what you're trying to do. Another common question that comes up is, I don't know when it's going to break. And that usually speaks to maybe not so much the data itself, but the process that acquires the data and preps the data for a particular use case. Maybe things are breaking down regularly, and maybe sometimes those breakdowns are kind of hidden until an issue rises at the end of the process. So understanding, is it being consistently delivered? Is it, are there anomalies in the data that are cropping up, maybe that I'm not noticing? And be doing that kind of root cause analysis in order to identify problems kind of speaks to understanding how consistently and well it can be brought to you. Fortunately, you're not alone. Every day we walk into companies like yours who are struggling to meet their data-driven goals, and because their data is a mess. Dealing with problems of fit, operational data fit, and how to fit that into analytical use cases, managing disparate data sets to get a better view of their data of their business, struggling with understanding where data is coming from and how that drives critical decisions, or even understanding the context of the data to ensure an even application of that information. And it's not necessarily limited to organizations like ours. There's some very famous examples of failure to understand or even trust your data that we've seen out in the public space. In the late 90s, NASA famously ran a $125 million Mars orbiter into the surface of Mars because their engineering team didn't understand that the data that they were looking at was represented in metric measurement, not English measurement. So definitely an extreme case of understanding the context of the information, or maybe even understanding the source of the information that you're making what in that case would be really critical business decisions on top of that. Another public case that comes to mind is PayPal. PayPal saw a fine of $7.7 million from the United States government for a total of about 500 transactions worth only $44,000 that violated sanctions against individuals and companies doing business with them. And if you think about that in the totality of all the transactions and the value of the transactions that PayPal probably processes on a regular day, it didn't take much in terms of a slip through, in terms of understanding and trusting that data to cost the company a substantial amount of money. So, for those of you thinking, well, I'm glad I'm not trying to put a Mars rover out there, the cost of dealing with these types of trust issues can nevertheless be substantial and take on many forms. There's the obvious direct cost of being PayPal and having to pay $7.7 million to the government over a compliance issue. But there are other types of costs that you kind of need to take into account when you think about the nature of trust and how you come to trust your data. There's the cost of preventing. So cost of developing defensive measures into the software and analytics in order to catch those issues, at least before they get into the final product. There's a cost of finding issues. Once you've discovered that you have a problem, the endless search for trying to understand where the problem is coming from and why it occurred this time can be very intensive. And then there's just the cost of failure when those issues aren't addressed and they do get into the final product and they start to undermine confidence in the processes that you're setting up or in the reports and dashboards that you're putting together to help drive internal decision making. So with this is probably a good time for us to maybe talk a little bit about what we mean about trusted data. So Paul, maybe you can chime in on this. What do you mean when we talk about trusted data?
Sure. So let's talk about really the path to trusted data here. So to answer that question, this is the typical progression we see at most of our customers. And so at the bottom of the pyramid, you see collected data. And we all know data has enormous utility. There's been a gold rush over the last decade to grab as much as companies can, and with the mindset of we'll figure it out later. I'll tell you, use kind of the paraphrase, there's gold in them, there are hills. But this also assumes that they're collecting the data they're collecting it in timely manner at the appropriate aggregate and granular levels. And really the game changer for some of these has been IoT, instrumentation, and digitalization of the world, with the recent really popularity of temporal data, collecting data over time. And the next tier is data quality. It represents data that's really usable, reliable, and it's based on consistent and objectively measured criteria. Here we're making the data trustworthy. We're also trying to avoid the scenario where a user finds a single issue in the data warehouse or the catalog, and then they assume the entire data source is untrustworthy. You'll also notice that it's a pyramid. So where we start off with massive amounts of data, when we get to quality data, the number of data that's actually passing that criteria at each stage is getting smaller and smaller. And then the third is discoverable data. Discoverable data is really data that's coherent. It's based on various degrees of literacy, documentation, and user education. It's really the enablement piece in the organization to know what data exists, the credibility, quality, context, and status. And then finally, the goal, the accessible data. And this is really getting the right data to the right users. And it represents really the ease in which users can obtain the usable data products, metadata, and documentation in a secure and cost-efficient manner that meets compliance, confidentiality, and regulatory standards. And what's really interesting about this pyramid is it really matches our analysis over the years we've done with key and critical data assets, which essentially states that your organization uses 4 to 6% of your actual data. And this means that above 80% or less than 20% of your data is creating 80% of your issues. So a little bit of overview on the path to trusted data. Well, I take it away, and how do you make it happen, Scott?
Yeah, so one of the ways that we talk about trust in data is that we talk about it in terms of data integrity. In other words, we want to take kind of an overarching holistic view, if you will, of your data. And as the slide says, data integrity is data with maximum accuracy, consistency, and context for confident business making decisions. And to kind of dig into this a bit, that means having consistency in the data and how the data is presented and approached and acquired, providing context around what that data is been used for, what information could be added to it and enrich it, as well as how it's been applied in other solutions. And then there's the conversation around accuracy. Is this the most accurate data I have on this particular topic? How many people are relying on this data and using this data successfully for similar type of applications, and understanding all the aspects of the data and how good the quality has maybe been historically. Traditionally, like within data quality, we've looked a lot at consistency as kind of being the driver of that, but really data integrity means understanding all of these dimensions and applying them equally across the data that you're using for your given project. Now, everyone is on a journey to continuously improve the integrity of their data, to better understand their business and ultimately better serve their customers. We've learned from our customers that there isn't a standard linear journey of data integrity that works for everyone, and that the days of large corporate initiatives are kind of dead at this point. Customers have told us that IT teams are working much more closely with the business users and jointly identifying and specifying scope that delivers meaningful business impact. And as a result, they tackle data integrity through distinct projects that give them business value, no matter where those steps fit into this journey, and then plan their next move from there. And not surprisingly, that means they want a solution that gives them the freedom to make those kind of choices and to start really from wherever it is that they're at in terms of the project that they're working on. Data integrity is, like I said, a journey. It's continuous. It requires best-in-class solutions working together to deliver those business values. And you have to be able to kind of approach it in a flexible way in order to kind of fit your business's needs. Now, organizational needs are changing. So it used to be that organizations had data management projects that were led by IT teams, focused primarily on responding to issues. They would target operational use cases and look to improve efficiencies and effectiveness from the back end. And they typically address that data where the data reside on premise within the organization. But as we know, that landscape is changing. Now we are seeing proactive data engineering with data engineers embedding data quality within the data pipelines themselves. There's a huge focus on analytics, including driving analytics for artificial intelligence and machine learning use cases. And in addition, companies are now migrating and centralizing their data in the cloud using cloud data providers such as Snowflake and Databricks and others. Those organizational trends are having a significant impact on how the data quality needs of a business are addressed. We see additional involvement from business teams, not just as a participant, but jointly leading those initiatives. Business teams need to ensure that data can be trusted, and they need to now have an active participation in the resolution process. These processes can now become much more automated and developed with methods that use built-in intelligence to help automate some of the basic decision making that traditionally would have been handled in a fixed process. The intelligence can help guide users in building the appropriate rules, performing sophisticated match processes, and monitoring data. The observation process can provide proactive alerts, allowing you to see anomalies in your data as they're occurring and alerting you to those anomalies so you can take action on them before they become problems. All this can provide a more seamless user experience by leveraging semantics and metadata as part of the process to give you more insight into the nature of the data and how it could be used. In addition, because companies are migrating and centralizing data in the cloud, they want to ensure data quality validations occur where the data resides. The idea of pumping data out of the cloud and into the cloud over and over again into fixed on-premise systems is giving way to more of a in-cloud native execution mode, which pushes the process to where the data is as opposed to bringing the data to the process. So some of the common themes that we see for successful data quality implementations. Paul?
I'd say at the top of the list is leadership buy-off. Every successful data quality initiative has executive sponsorship. It's crucial that management understands the importance of data quality, and you do this by getting them to understand the cost that you've talked about the cost before. Both hidden and known cost. Second is once you've gained agreement on the data quality is real and it's a costly problem, really identify specific real world examples and remediations.
Institutionalizing data quality and the mindset around data quality is another common theme we see in successful implementations. Having a mindset that everyone in the organization can contribute to the quality of the data. Everybody can actually even be able to view and understand the data, its lineage, and its overall status, and even maybe contributing to fixing or correcting issues with the data is another hallmark of organizations that are successful in implementing these data quality solutions.
Next on the list, metrics and measurements. Everybody has different varying degrees of what we consider to be good data. Really, as an organization, you need to come to a common understanding of what the definition of good data is, and what fixed data would look like, preferably at a quantitative level. And really, the key at this juncture is to get everybody actively involved in the process, identifying the problematic issues, and just really keeping it as a positive experience.
In systems and automation, more and more people are relying on automation in order to take many complex problems and kind of audit and execute on those on a regular basis. Automation becomes key, but also the ability to build decision making into those automation processes to help alleviate some of the tasks from manual intervention. So having an investment in tools that can monitor your data, can raise alerts about your data, can automate processes of decision making regarding the data are another key hallmark.
And lastly, openness and interoperability. Let's face it. Openness and interoperability is an absolute necessity in the modern business world, also in the modern technology stack. I liked how one of my customers said it the other day. They called it liberating the data. I really like that term. A good example of that, liberating the data is similar, analogous to liberating the applications. If you remember a few years ago, you had applications, and if you wanted to use it, you had to get the right operating system. You had this arcane deployment process. You had different release cycles. You might get it, once a quarter, once a year. And now with the advent of cloud and software as a service, if you want an application today, you go to the App Store, or you just go to a cloud provider and you start using the application. Just like email. If you want an email application, you go subscribe to an email application and you have it without the install process. So that same concept applied to data. So really, in summary, to ensure high quality data, what you want to do is find early and automate, standardize and measure, reuse, and educate your organization and users. So what do we mean by find early and automate? Really, I'm using a fundamental tenet here that says good data increases customer satisfaction and improves profitability. So in other words, data serves really one of these three purposes. It increases or decreases profitability, it improves competitiveness, and it enables regulatory compliance. So let's take, for example, your customer finds an issue. This is your most expensive type of issue. The next one is really maybe you find the issue, or one of your users or partners finds the issue before the customer. Now, this is going to be cheaper than your customer finding it, but still pretty expensive. And then lastly, and the most least expensive option, is really your systems prevent the issue from occurring in the first place. And this is where you want to be. And this goes beyond just systems. It's really a paradigm shift so that your entire organization is educated, aligned, and empowered to improve your data. So what does this look like in practice? Let's take a look at kind of a typical data product process or pipeline. You've probably seen this in your organization. You have a data supplier starting on the far left. This might be a purchase data set. It might be a data set from a customer list, marketing data, invoice, or an order. Really, the list goes on and on. So you have the data. It starts off as a single data set. It goes through numerous processes. Maybe it's transformed, enriched, blended, and then it's published to a warehouse or to the cloud. So keep in mind, what started as one data set, by the time it's been replicated and changed, you might have 1 to the nth number of outputs by that time. Then what happens is somebody sees your data product and they want to use it. So they go and they consume the data set. So you've got the supply process all the way through the consumer. And once they consume it, they find an issue or a defect. The defect is reported to IT. It gets prioritized, it gets analyzed, fixed, tested, and then finally deployed. And this process can take days, weeks, potentially months. And to make matters a lot worse is this is a repetitive process. This happens every time you get a refresh of the data. So let's look at an alternative method. So an alternative method with data pipelines with quality built in. In this picture, we're simply showing some time-tested and proven data quality improvement methods, and you'll find these same type of techniques in almost every quality management methodology. For example, there's TQM, where it's a management approach to long-term success through customer satisfaction. There's a host of others, such as SBC, Six Sigma, and Lean. And the basic premise of all these techniques is that for a manufactured product, each step is monitored using statistical methods and rules. In this example, there's an issue in process number 3, where it gets remediated and then fixed before it moves on to process number 4, essentially proactively preventing the issue in the consumed data product. So why isn't this being done? Traditionally it's been time-consuming and expensive for complex data products. The good news is that technology has caught up for those same complex data products. Okay, so standardize and measure. What do I mean by this? Really, it's a method to give some more quantitative analysis onto your data. And so what we often see are customers using scores associated with rules. And all of those are going to vary based on your organization. I'm going to show you kind of 3 different categories of those rules. The first one being really a quality score. And a quality score answers the question of, how good is my data? You might have seen these categorized in dimensions. Really, you typically see those in, for example, accuracy, completeness, consistency, timeliness, validity, and uniqueness. But really, they're looking at the actual data, things like is the data null, or is it blank, has a semantic type been assigned to it? Is it adhering to my business policies? A second category of scores really has governance scores, and that answers the question, how well am I governing my data? You might be asking questions like, has a business owner been assigned? Has a data steward been assigned? Does the asset have the right description populated where people can see it? Is the status certified? And last on the scores are the other trust scores. And these really answer the question, can I trust my data? Are other users using the data? How many downstream assets are using the data? Are there alerts? Are there known issues with the data? Is there a positive sentiment on that data? So all of those combine really to give you a trust score. And now we're going to kind of show you a demonstration of what I mean by that. What you're seeing here is a typical system for tracking data quality scores. So you can see here there are different rules on this data set called customer cleansed. You can see that, they're parsing the email for validation, the name, the phone number, looking at the dates and verifying the addresses, and all of these combining to give a quantitative score of how good the data is. On the far right, you can kind of see, here's a history. Very important. All the really the methodologies for improving data quality really hinge on a tenet that you're tracking your improvement to your data for both a improvement process to see how well you're doing, but also to communicate to the management level of those impacts of the data quality initiatives. Helpful to have not just the scores and the tracking, but also, you can see how it's calculated, and then we can see the definition of that score as well. So really important to have a system of record in place that's tracking this, communicating it to your end users, and allowing them to find your data.
Thanks, Paul. So as you can kind of see, there is this overlap, particularly in the area of data integrity, where in order to get a clear view into the quality of your data, you need to kind of look at it from the perspective of both governance and quality. What governance kind of gives you, and cataloging kind of gives you that foundational view of your data, where you can, and becomes a kind of a great kickoff point by providing a common place to understand sources, context, lineage, and other factors that can help you may help you make better decisions on top of that data and help better articulate what issues might exist and the extent of those issues. It also is a great place to help level set how the business defines quality and prioritizes what actions need to take place first. Again, the idea isn't to tackle everything all at once, but to focus on business needs and objectives to drive an ongoing process of improvement, bit by bit, step by step. And across a number of different data quality use cases, and commonly we've seen a lot of, these are some of the ones that we see very commonly in our customer base, need for being able to do profiling and rule management, address and contact validation to add context to data, consolidation and comparison in order to clean up and make data more accurate, and also dealing with data on the move. There's really a common set of capabilities that you might leverage in order to address those issues, such as being able to do data validation, maintaining data quality standards when handling high volumes of data. It's difficult, but it is imperative. And basic data format compliance, schema validation, profiling and understanding of that data, that's all very key to a lot of these processes. Being able to provide deduplication and entity resolution solutions that can take a look at data either within itself or across data sets in order to find and eliminate duplicate values in order to make for more accurate and concise information. Reconciling issues across that do come up, whether it's by reconciliation across data sets or by involving workflows and third parties, and directing the right data to the right people to deal with those types of issues. And then dealing with data in motion as data moves between systems and processes within an organization, having a view into those pipelines is a key requirement in terms of catching and dealing with data quality issues. Now, one of the things that is kind of a common use case, if you will, or are commonly discussed in these days around data quality is the effect of data on the quality of your AI or ML-driven initiatives. For that, maybe Paul, you can add some context around that.
Yeah, definitely. So we've all heard these statistics. 67% of companies are integrating AI into their corporate strategy. 60% of users are using AI in their day-to-day duties. And really, I think everyone knows AI is having a huge business impact. And why is that? Some of a lot of that can be attributed to accuracy. If you look at how accurate AI is now compared to 3 to 5 years ago. And it's a cyclical process, an exponential in growth. So, for example, the better the data is, the more accurate the predictions. The more accurate the predictions, the more people are using AI, and the more people using AI, and more data to have more accurate predictions. And another effect is the cloud. The cloud has been a serious enabler of AI, especially as the cloud becomes omnipresent in both our personal and business lives. Again, it's a cyclical relationship. The more data on the cloud, the more data for AI, the more AI usage. And lastly, companies are going to need to catch up with data quality, integrity, and AI governance. We're at the early stages, but we're already starting to see inquiries from customers talking about governance, AI governance. If you haven't already, you probably already have a policy in place at your company regarding AI. So it's definitely headed to you. I'm going to talk about a couple examples here. So let's take the first example, high quality data. We've got a great quote from one of our resident data scientists. I'll read it here. ML models are abstractions of the data they are trained on. So the quality of the model is reflected in the data it is trained on. In essence, garbage in, garbage out. But what you might not know is really 80% of data scientists and your data teams are spending that time collecting and cleansing data. But roughly only 54 to 90% of those models are making it into production. So if you look at the total wasted time working with data, trying to cleanse it and fix it, really can make your AI teams more effective by giving them good data in the first place. The second example with ML ops. So you probably heard the term ML ops and data observability. If not, ML ops are really the people, processes, and technologies involved with the continuous delivery of your AI in your organization. And data observability is a process of monitoring your data for anomalies based on historical patterns. And so one of the key components of ML ops is this concept of freshness and how freshness impacts the relevance of your model predictions over time. Models are trained on static data, but that data changes, and ML models tend to expire. So, really, in many cases, running analytics with old training data can even add more noise into your models when you add new data. So a couple examples of that, take forest fires. If you have an ML model that uses forest fire data from 20 to 3 years ago, you may not capture the patterns in emerging with the present climate and with data drift. So take, for example, you've got sales reports that are based on predictions based on specific products or regions, but that product list is updated. So those models aren't taking into consideration some of those new products listed. Those are a couple examples of how data quality is impacting your AI.
So as we wrap up here, let me talk about an example use case here of how your trusted data impacts your business. So does this use case sound familiar? I need to drive our new marketing campaign based on lists I get from outside vendors and internal sources, but how do I know if the lists are any good? And so what could be causing trust issues here? So one of which in the statement is unknown sources. How do you judge the quality of the data? Could you establish quality checks that need to be run before the data is onboarded? Do you need to monitor for regular updates or freshness of the data? Do you need to establish measures for outside data providers to keep track of their performance over time? These are all things that might help address those trust issues. Another thing is transformations. Am I getting new data or the entire data dump? In many cases, I don't necessarily always get just what changed from version to version of the data. I still have to comb it through for what was old information, what I already knew, and what has changed since the last time I saw this data set. So being able to match against and create processes that in effect deduplicate that data against your known contacts is a critical transformation step, and that also helps bring up the trust in the data. Is information missing? Is it missing correct information? Am I getting bad addresses, bad information from here? And that's where contact information quality becomes a key problem. Particularly for high-cost marketing campaigns like using mailers, where address quality can have a big impact on the overall costs of your campaign. Making sure that the information that you're using is of high quality, it has the right context, it is fresh and accurate is also an area where you can build some measures around improving the trust in that. And then there's the what do we call the IT issues. Monitoring for continual updates, ensuring that I'm always getting the freshest information. Once I start to automate these processes, is that freshness being maintained? Am I continuing to see the quality that I expected when I initially set up the process? Having the ability to observe those pipelines, to intelligently look for anomalies and changes that might alert you to potential problems becomes something else that you can do in order to improve the overall trust that you have in your data. So let me take a moment and talk a little bit about us at Precisely. As we've mentioned before, data integrity is a key theme of how we approach data quality with many of our customers who are looking to not just deal with a single dimension of the data quality problem, but actually a much more holistic view, addressing both the consistency, the context, and the accuracy of the data. And again, what they need is a platform or product that can address that issue from a number of different directions, all built around a common catalog and understanding of the data. So here at Precisely, we have the Data Integrity Suite. This is a suite of products that are SaaS-based and allow you to kind of help you, it's built around a common catalog to help you better understand your data, and from there identify issues, understand the overall quality of the data, define business rules and scoring metrics against which you can better monitor and understand that data and build processes around that data, and then branch out from there into other tools that leverage that same information to help other processes such as data integration, building observations on the data pipeline, building governance practices on top of that, building remediation processes through a data quality tool, adding context with geo-addressing and spatial analytics, and even tapping into a library of data enrichment information to add additional outside context to the data that you have within your organization. All this on top of a platform which is intelligent, is deployable both in the cloud and on-prem, and has a consistent data catalog where you can capture and share that information around your organization, and works with a number of technologies that you might already have in your environment, such as Databricks, Snowflake, AWS, Google Cloud, etc. And with that, I will hand back over to Julie to help wrap us up. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'd like to thank Scott and Paul today for their time and for helping us understand how we can improve our data quality to enable trust in our data and decisions. We also have some additional resources for you. On the left-hand side, you can see some of the additional information you can find to help you move your data quality forward. And on the right-hand side, you can see webinars that are upcoming that can provide you for some additional information about what you heard today. All of this information can be found in the resources section within the webinar. So with that, again, I would like to thank Scott Arnett and Paul Rasmussen for their time and expertise today, and we hope that you got a lot out of this session. If you have any questions, again, put them in the chat, and we will reach out and get back with you. Thank you.